Maya wasn't like other teenagers. While her friends scrolled through social media, Maya devoured art history books. While they obsessed over the latest pop star, Maya could identify a painting's era based on a single brushstroke. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a consuming passion, bordering on obsession. Her room wasn't plastered with posters of celebrities. Instead, meticulously framed prints of Van Gogh's Starry Night, Monet's Impression, Sunrise, and Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring adorned the walls. Each print was carefully chosen for its representation of a particular artistic technique. Maya could spend hours studying the impasto of Van Gogh, the broken color of Monet, and the sfumato of Vermeer. This meticulous nature extended beyond art. Her closet wasn't a chaotic mess of clothes, it was organized by color, then by sleeve length, then by fabric weight. Her school notebooks were color-coded and labeled with an almost compulsive precision. Even her lunchbox was a testament to her detail-oriented mind, perfectly sliced fruits and vegetables arranged in neat rows, each item contributing to a balanced and aesthetically pleasing meal. This attention to detail sometimes made it difficult for Maya to connect with her peers. They found her intense focus on minutiae a bit much. They teased her gently, calling her the art detective or Ms. Perfection. But Maya didn't mind. She knew that her unique perspective allowed her to see things that others missed. For instance, she once corrected a historical inaccuracy in a popular movie, pointing out that the type of paint used in a scene set in the 17th century wasn't invented until the 19th century. The director actually responded to her online comment, admitting the mistake and thanking her for her keen observation. Her teachers, however, appreciated her sharp mind. Her art history teacher, Mr. Davies, often relied on Maya to identify the subtle nuances in paintings and sculptures. He recognized her potential and encouraged her to pursue her passion. He knew that her eye for detail was a rare gift, a talent that could lead her to great things. He also knew about the upcoming field trip to the prestigious art museum, and he secretly hoped that it would ignite an even greater spark in Maya's already burning passion for art. The day of the field trip dawned bright and clear, mirroring the excitement bubbling inside Maya. She practically vibrated with anticipation as she boarded the bus, her meticulously packed backpack feeling lighter than air. Mr. Davies, ever observant, smiled knowingly at her enthusiasm. He'd seen that spark in her eyes, the unwavering dedication that set her apart. The Metropolitan Art Gallery loomed large as the bus pulled up, its grand facade a promise of artistic wonders within. A banner proclaimed, "Newly discovered Impressionists, a private collection revealed." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any exhibit, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to witness masterpieces unseen by the public for decades. As the class filed into the museum, Maya felt a sense of reverence wash over her. The hushed atmosphere, the soft lighting, the sheer volume of art, it was overwhelming in the best possible way. Mr. Davies led them through the initial galleries, pointing out key features of various Impressionist works. But Maya could barely focus on his commentary. She was too eager to explore the new collection. Finally, they arrived at the entrance to the special exhibit. A velvet rope cordoned off the entrance, adding to the air of exclusivity. Maya felt a thrill course through her as she stepped inside. The room was filled with light and color, a vibrant tapestry of brushstrokes and emotions. Canvases depicting sun-drenched landscapes, bustling cityscapes, and intimate portraits lined the walls. Monet, Renoir, Degas, Pissarro, the masters were all represented. Maya moved slowly from painting to painting, her eyes scanning every detail, absorbing every nuance. She felt like she was stepping back in time, connecting with the artists on a deeply personal level. This wasn't just art, it was history, culture, and human expression all rolled into one. She felt a profound sense of connection to these long-dead artists, a silent conversation across the centuries. She paused before a particularly striking Monet, a depiction of water lilies bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The colors were breathtaking, the brushstrokes fluid and effortless. Maya could almost feel the cool spray of the water, hear the gentle rustling of the leaves. It was a perfect example of Impressionism at its finest. Or so she thought. The Monet, a tranquil scene of water lilies, initially captivated Maya. The shimmering reflections, the delicate hues of pink and lavender, the overall sense of serenity, it was quintessential Monet. She stepped closer, wanting to fully absorb the master's technique. That's when she saw it. In the lower right corner of the canvas, near the signature, the brushstrokes seemed off. They were thicker, more deliberate, almost clumsy compared to the feathery, light touches that characterized the rest of the painting. It was as if a different hand had painted that small section. A chill ran down Maya's spine. She knew Monet's work intimately. She had studied his brushstrokes, analyzed his color palettes, and even tried to replicate his techniques in her own paintings. Something was undeniably wrong. The rest of the painting flowed with a natural rhythm, the colors blending seamlessly. But in that corner, the brushstrokes were harsh and angular, the colors slightly muddied. It was a jarring contrast, like a discordant note in a beautiful melody. Maya blinked, wondering if she was imagining things. Maybe the lighting was playing tricks on her eyes. Or perhaps she was simply being overly critical, her obsession with detail getting the better of her. She took a step back, trying to gain a wider perspective. But the inconsistency remained. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She pulled out her phone and zoomed in on the suspicious area, snapping a few photos. She needed to compare these brushstrokes to authentic Monet works. She needed to confirm her suspicions. The initial excitement she had felt upon entering the exhibit began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of unease. What if she was right? What if this renowned painting, part of a newly discovered collection, was a forgery? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. She knew she had to investigate further, to uncover the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. This wasn't just about art history anymore, it was about justice and the preservation of artistic integrity. Determined to share her discovery, Maya searched for Mr. Davies. She found him across the room, discussing Renoir's use of light with a small group of students. Gathering her courage, she approached him, her voice slightly trembling with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Mr. Davies," she began, "I think there's something wrong with that Monet over there." She gestured towards the water lilies painting. Mr. Davies, a kind and patient man, turned his attention to Maya. "What do you mean, Maya? Is something damaged?" "No, it's not damaged," Maya explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's the brushstrokes, in the lower right corner. They don't look like Monet's. They're different." Mr. Davies frowned slightly. He appreciated Maya's enthusiasm, but he also knew her tendency to overanalyze. "Maya, this collection has been authenticated by some of the leading experts in the world. I'm sure everything is perfectly legitimate. But Mr. Davies, I've studied Monet's techniques for years. I know what his brushstrokes look like. These are different. Please, just take a look." Mr. Davies sighed inwardly. He didn't want to discourage Maya's passion, but he also didn't want her to get carried away. He glanced at the Monet, his eyes scanning the canvas briefly. "Maya, I see what you mean about the texture being slightly different in that corner. But it could just be a restoration. Or perhaps Monet was experimenting with a new technique. I really think you're being overly critical." Maya's heart sank. She had hoped that Mr. Davies would take her seriously, that he would recognize the validity of her concerns. But he had dismissed her, attributing her observations to her overly critical nature. "But..." Maya started to protest, but Mr. Davies gently cut her off. "Let's not dwell on this, Maya. Let's focus on enjoying the rest of the exhibit." He turned back to the group of students, resuming his discussion of Renoir. Maya stood there for a moment, feeling a wave of frustration wash over her. She knew what she had seen. She knew that something was wrong. But no one believed her. Despite the disappointment, Maya's determination only grew stronger. She wouldn't let this setback deter her. She would prove her point, even if she had to do it on her own. She resolved to gather more evidence, to research the painting's provenance, and to find someone who would take her seriously. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Back home, Maya dove headfirst into research. Her bedroom transformed into a makeshift investigation headquarters, art books and printouts strewn across her desk. She started with the museum's online catalog, meticulously examining the information provided about the Monet painting. The description mentioned that it was a recent acquisition, part of a private collection that had remained hidden from the public eye for decades. The catalog also included a brief provenance, tracing the painting's ownership back to a wealthy European family in the early 20th century. However, there was a significant gap in the record, a period of almost 50 years where the painting's whereabouts were unknown. The documentation simply stated that it had remained in private hands during that time. Maya frowned. This was unusual. Most reputable art collectors kept meticulous records of their acquisitions and sales. The lack of documentation for such a long period raised a red flag. She expanded her search, scouring online databases, auction records, and art historical archives. She spent hours poring over digitized documents, searching for any mention of the painting or its previous owners. She felt like a detective, piecing together fragments of information to solve a complex puzzle. The more she researched, the more suspicious she became. She discovered that the European family mentioned in the museum's catalog had a history of financial troubles. They had reportedly sold off several valuable assets in the mid-20th century, but there was no record of the Monet painting being among them. Furthermore, she found evidence that a different painting, also attributed to Monet, had surfaced on the black market several years ago. The description of that painting, although vague, bore a striking resemblance to the water lilies seen in the museum. Could it be possible that the original Monet had been stolen and replaced with a forgery? Maya's heart pounded in her chest. The pieces were starting to fall into place. The brushstroke inconsistencies, the gaps in the provenance, the rumors of a similar painting on the black market, it all pointed to one conclusion: the Monet in the museum was likely a fake. But she needed more solid proof. She needed to connect the dots, to build an airtight case that would convince the experts that she was right. Her quest for the truth had just begun. The digital breadcrumbs were there, and she was determined to follow them. Maya knew she needed more than just circumstantial evidence to convince the art world that the Monet was a fake. She needed concrete proof, visual evidence that would be undeniable. So, she decided to create a detailed visual comparison, meticulously documenting the discrepancies she had observed. She started by compiling a digital archive of authentic Monet paintings. She downloaded high-resolution images from museum websites and art databases, focusing on works from the same period as the water lilies seen. She then zoomed in on the brushstrokes, studying their texture, direction, and color variations. Next, she revisited the photos she had taken at the museum, the close-ups of the suspicious corner of the Monet painting. Using photo editing software, she enhanced the images, bringing out the details of the brushstrokes even further. She wanted to make sure that every nuance was visible. Then came the painstaking process of comparison. She created side-by-side collages, juxtaposing the authentic Monet brushstrokes with those from the questionable painting. She labeled each image carefully, noting the specific characteristics of each stroke. She paid particular attention to the impasto, the thickness of the paint. In the authentic Monet works, the impasto was applied in delicate layers, creating a subtle sense of depth and texture. But in the suspicious corner of the water lilies painting, the impasto was thick and uneven, almost gloppy. She also analyzed the direction of the brushstrokes. In the authentic Monets, the strokes flowed in a natural, almost organic way, following the contours of the subject matter. But in the questionable painting, the strokes were more haphazard, lacking the same sense of fluidity. As she worked, Maya felt a growing sense of confidence. The visual evidence was overwhelming. The brushstrokes in the suspicious corner were simply not consistent with Monet's typical style. It was as if someone had tried to imitate his technique but had failed miserably. She organized her findings into a comprehensive digital report, complete with high-resolution images, detailed annotations, and a clear explanation of her methodology. She wanted to present her case in a professional and persuasive manner. She knew that sharing her findings could be risky. She was just a teenager, going up against the established art world. But she believed in the power of truth, and she was determined to expose the forgery, no matter the consequences. Knowing she needed to get her findings out there, but also wary of ridicule or dismissal, Maya decided to turn to the online art community. She remembered reading about an art forum called Palette Talk, a place where art enthusiasts, historians, and even some experts gathered to discuss and debate various topics. Creating a new, anonymous profile under the username Brushstroke Detective, Maya carefully crafted a post. She summarized her observations about the Monet painting, highlighting the brushstroke inconsistencies and the gaps in the provenance. She attached her visual comparison report, including the high-resolution images and detailed annotations. She braced herself as she hit the Submit button. She knew that the response could be mixed. Some people might dismiss her as a naive teenager with an overactive imagination. Others might be intrigued by her findings but hesitant to challenge the established art world. The first few responses were discouraging. Some users accused her of being a troll, trying to stir up controversy. Others dismissed her observations as subjective and insignificant. One user even sarcastically suggested that she needed to get a life. But then, a few more thoughtful responses started to trickle in. Some users acknowledged that the brushstrokes in the suspicious corner did look different from the rest of the painting. Others praised her attention to detail and her thorough research. One user, with the handle ArtHistorian72, wrote, "This is actually quite interesting. The brushstroke analysis is well done, and the provenance issues are definitely concerning. I'm not ready to declare it a forgery just yet, but it certainly warrants further investigation." Another user, who identified herself as a conservator, commented, "I've seen similar inconsistencies in restored paintings. It's possible that a section of the painting was damaged and had to be retouched by a different artist. However, the lack of documentation is definitely suspicious." Then, a message arrived from a user with a blue checkmark next to their name, indicating that they were a verified expert. The user's name was Dr. Vance, and their profile stated that they were a renowned art authenticator. Dr. Vance wrote, "Brushstroke Detective, your observations are quite compelling. I've reviewed your report, and I must say I'm intrigued. The inconsistencies you've pointed out are certainly worth exploring further. Would you be willing to discuss this with me in more detail?" Maya's heart leaped with excitement. Finally, someone with real expertise was taking her seriously. Maybe, just maybe, she was on the right track. Dr. Eleanor Vance was a legend in the art world. Her name was synonymous with authenticity, her expertise sought after by museums, collectors, and law enforcement agencies around the globe. She had a reputation for being meticulous, uncompromising, and possessing an almost uncanny ability to spot forgeries. Eleanor had seen Maya's post while idly browsing Palette Talk during a rare moment of downtime. Initially, she was skeptical. The internet was full of armchair experts and conspiracy theorists. But as she read Maya's analysis and examined the visual comparison report, she became increasingly impressed. The teenager's attention to detail was remarkable. She had identified subtle nuances in the brushstrokes that even Eleanor, with her years of experience, had initially missed. The provenance issues were also concerning, and Eleanor knew that gaps in the ownership history could be a sign of foul play. What impressed Eleanor most was Maya's methodology. She had approached the problem with a scientific rigor, gathering evidence, analyzing data, and presenting her findings in a clear and persuasive manner. It was the kind of thoroughness that Eleanor admired and respected. Intrigued, Eleanor decided to reach out to Brushstroke Detective. She sent a private message through the forum, identifying herself and expressing her interest in Maya's findings. She was careful to be respectful and encouraging, knowing that she was dealing with a young and potentially vulnerable individual. Eleanor was used to dealing with art experts, museum curators, and wealthy collectors. Communicating with a teenager through an online forum was a new experience for her. But she recognized that talent could come from anywhere, and she was always open to new perspectives. She knew that the art world was often resistant to change, that established institutions were reluctant to admit mistakes. But Eleanor believed in the importance of truth and integrity, and she was willing to challenge the status quo if necessary. She eagerly awaited Maya's response, hoping that the teenager would be willing to collaborate with her. She sensed that together, they could uncover the truth about the Monet painting and potentially expose a major art forgery scheme. The thought was both exciting and daunting. She had a feeling this was going to be a very interesting case. After a flurry of online messages and a carefully arranged phone call, Maya, still using the pseudonym Brushstroke Detective, agreed to meet Dr. Vance in person. They chose the Metropolitan Art Gallery as their meeting place, specifically in front of the now infamous Monet painting. Maya was nervous but also exhilarated. Meeting Dr. Vance felt surreal, like stepping into one of her art history books. She spotted Dr. Vance immediately, a woman of elegant bearing with sharp, intelligent eyes. She carried herself with an air of quiet authority. "Brushstroke Detective," Dr. Vance said with a warm smile, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Please, call me Eleanor." Maya shook her hand, her own hand slightly trembling. "It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Vance. Eleanor." They spent the next hour examining the Monet painting together. Eleanor brought a small magnifying glass and a portable UV light, tools of her trade. She scrutinized the brushstrokes, the colors, and the canvas itself. She asked Maya to point out the specific areas of concern, and Maya eagerly obliged, explaining her observations in detail. Eleanor listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. She didn't dismiss Maya's concerns as Mr. Davies had done. Instead, she treated her as a fellow expert, respecting her knowledge and insights. As Eleanor examined the painting under the UV light, her expression grew serious. "You were right," she said finally, her voice low. "There are anomalies here. The paint in this corner fluoresces differently than the rest of the painting. It suggests that it's a different type of pigment, possibly a more recent formulation." Maya's heart soared. She had been right all along. Eleanor stepped back, studying the painting from a distance. "The brushstrokes are also problematic," she continued. "They lack the fluidity and spontaneity that characterize Monet's work. It's as if the artist was trying too hard to imitate his style." She turned to Maya, her eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and concern. "This painting warrants further investigation," she said. "I'm going to contact the museum director and inform him of our findings. This could be a very serious matter." Maya felt a surge of pride and accomplishment. She had started with a hunch, a nagging feeling that something was wrong. And now, thanks to her persistence and her collaboration with Dr. Vance, she was on the verge of uncovering a potentially major art forgery. The journey had just begun, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Eleanor knew that approaching the museum director was a delicate matter. She couldn't simply barge in and accuse them of displaying a forgery. She needed to be diplomatic, providing enough evidence to raise concerns without causing undue alarm. She requested a private meeting with Mr. Harrison, the museum director, a seasoned art administrator with a reputation for being both shrewd and cautious. She emphasized the confidential nature of her concerns, explaining that she had discovered some anomalies in the Monet painting that warranted further investigation. She presented her findings in a calm and professional manner, carefully outlining the brushstroke inconsistencies, the pigment discrepancies, and the gaps in the provenance. She also mentioned Maya's contribution, praising her keen eye for detail and her meticulous research. However, she refrained from revealing Maya's identity, wanting to protect her from potential backlash. Mr. Harrison listened intently, his expression growing increasingly grave as Eleanor spoke. He knew Eleanor's reputation and respected her expertise. He also understood the potential ramifications of displaying a forgery, the damage it could inflict on the museum's reputation and the financial implications for the collection. He thanked Eleanor for bringing the matter to his attention and assured her that he would launch an internal investigation immediately. He stressed the need for discretion, explaining that he didn't want to create a public scandal until they had gathered more evidence. He assembled a small, trusted team to conduct the investigation, including the museum's head conservator, its chief curator, and its legal counsel. They began by re-examining the Monet painting, using advanced analytical techniques to assess the authenticity of the pigments and the canvas. They also delved deeper into the painting's provenance, contacting auction houses, art dealers, and private collectors in an attempt to fill in the gaps in its documented history. They were particularly interested in the period of 50 years where the painting's whereabouts were unknown. The investigation was conducted with the utmost secrecy, behind closed doors and away from the prying eyes of the media. Mr. Harrison knew that the stakes were high, and he was determined to protect the museum's interests, whatever the cost. Little did he know, the investigation would soon uncover a web of deceit and treachery that extended far beyond a single forged painting. The museum's internal investigation quickly narrowed its focus to the recent acquisitions, specifically the collection that included the suspect Monet. Mr. Harrison instructed his team to meticulously review all documentation related to the purchase, authentication, and appraisal of each painting in the collection. They scrutinized the reports of the art experts who had been hired to assess the collection's authenticity. They examined the paperwork related to the purchase agreement, paying close attention to the financial transactions and the legal guarantees provided by the seller. The investigation also centered on the individuals involved in bringing the collection to the museum. They interviewed the curator who had championed the acquisition, the conservator who had examined the paintings for any signs of damage or restoration, and the registrar who had been responsible for cataloging and storing the collection. The team also looked into the background of the art dealer who had brokered the sale, a man named Mr. Dubois, a figure known for his flamboyant personality and his extensive network of contacts in the art world. They discovered that Mr. Dubois had a somewhat checkered past, with rumors of shady dealings and questionable ethics. As the investigation progressed, the team began to uncover some troubling inconsistencies. They found that some of the authentication reports were incomplete, lacking the detailed analysis and documentation that would typically be expected for such valuable works of art. They also discovered that the museum had paid a significantly higher price for the collection than other comparable collections had sold for in recent years. This raised suspicions that the seller might have been trying to inflate the value of the paintings, possibly to conceal a forgery scheme. The team felt a growing sense of unease. It was becoming increasingly clear that something was amiss. But they still lacked the smoking gun, the definitive proof that would confirm their suspicions. The investigation was far from over, and the truth remained elusive. The pressure was mounting. Mr. Harrison demanded answers and quick results. Every member of the team felt the weight of the museum's future on their shoulders. As the museum's investigation deepened, the team began to explore other avenues of inquiry. They reviewed security footage, examined access logs, and interviewed museum staff, searching for any clues that might shed light on the potential forgery. It was during these interviews that a name surfaced repeatedly: David. David was a young intern in the conservation department, a talented but somewhat introverted artist with a passion for impressionist painting. He had been working at the museum for several months, assisting with various tasks related to the care and maintenance of the collection. Several staff members described David as being disgruntled and underappreciated. He had reportedly expressed frustration with the mundane nature of his assigned tasks and had complained about not being given more opportunities to showcase his artistic talent. What particularly piqued the investigators' interest was David's access to the museum's archives and art supplies. As an intern in the conservation department, he had access to a vast collection of historical documents, including detailed records of the museum's holdings and the techniques used by various artists. He also had access to the museum's art supplies, including paints, canvases, and brushes, which were used for restoration and conservation work. This access, combined with his artistic talent and his apparent resentment towards the museum, made him a prime suspect in the forgery investigation. The investigators decided to bring David in for questioning. They approached him cautiously, wanting to avoid alarming him or alerting him to their suspicions. They framed the interview as a routine inquiry, simply wanting to gather information about the recent acquisitions. But as the interview progressed, the investigators began to press David on his access to the museum's archives and art supplies. They asked him about his knowledge of Impressionist painting techniques and his opinions about the authenticity of the Monet painting. David became increasingly nervous and evasive. He stammered, avoided eye contact, and provided inconsistent answers. It was clear to the investigators that he was hiding something. They knew they were getting closer to the truth. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fit together. The scene shifts, dissolving into a series of flashbacks that reveal David's inner world, his motivations, and the events that led him down the path of forgery. We see David, fresh out of art school, brimming with talent and ambition. He had always dreamed of becoming a famous painter, of having his work displayed in prestigious museums alongside the masters he admired. But reality had been harsh. He had struggled to find his artistic voice, his paintings often dismissed as derivative or unoriginal. He had applied for numerous grants and residencies, only to be rejected time and time again. Feeling defeated and discouraged, David had taken the internship at the Metropolitan Art Gallery, hoping to immerse himself in the world of art and learn from the best. But the internship had turned out to be a soul-crushing experience. He was relegated to menial tasks, cleaning brushes, organizing supplies, and running errands for the senior conservators. His artistic talent was ignored, his ideas dismissed. He felt invisible, a mere cog in a vast and indifferent machine. One day, while working in the museum's archives, David stumbled upon a collection of letters written by famous Impressionist painters. He was captivated by their passion, their struggles, and their unwavering belief in their own artistic vision. He began to study their techniques, meticulously analyzing their brushstrokes, their color palettes, and their use of light. He realized that he had the skill to imitate their styles, to create paintings that were indistinguishable from the originals. The idea of forging masterpieces began to take root in his mind. It was a way to prove his artistic talent, to show the world that he was capable of greatness. It was also a way to get revenge on the museum, which he felt had overlooked and underappreciated him. He imagined the thrill of fooling the experts, of creating forgeries that would be admired and celebrated as genuine works of art. It was a dangerous game, but David was willing to take the risk. He was determined to prove himself, no matter the cost. The seeds of resentment had blossomed into a full-blown scheme, fueled by a bruised ego and a desperate desire for recognition. The flashbacks continue, painting a picture of David's meticulous preparation and unwavering dedication to his forgery scheme. He wasn't just dabbling, he was fully committed to mastering the techniques of the Impressionist masters. Night after night, after his tedious internship duties were complete, David would transform his small apartment into a clandestine art studio. He surrounded himself with art books, reproductions of famous paintings, and notes he had taken from the museum's archives. He would spend hours studying the brushstrokes of Monet, Renoir, Degas, and Pissarro, analyzing their every nuance. He practiced replicating their techniques, experimenting with different brushes, paints, and canvases. He meticulously documented his progress, keeping a detailed journal of his experiments. He learned about the pigments used by the Impressionists, their chemical composition, and their aging properties. He scoured art supply stores, searching for the closest possible matches to the original materials. He even experimented with aging techniques, using coffee stains and other household items to give his forgeries an authentic look. David's talent was undeniable. He had a natural aptitude for painting, and his dedication to his craft was unwavering. He poured his heart and soul into his forgeries, striving to create works that were indistinguishable from the originals. He wasn't just copying the paintings, he was trying to capture the essence of the artists, to understand their thought processes and their artistic vision. He wanted to create forgeries that were not only visually convincing but also emotionally resonant. He practiced for months, perfecting his techniques, honing his skills, and refining his methods. He created dozens of forgeries, each one more convincing than the last. He was becoming a master forger, a skilled imitator with an uncanny ability to replicate the styles of the Impressionist masters. He was ready to put his plan into action. The museum, unknowingly, was about to become the stage for his grand deception. He was ready to prove his worth, even if it meant breaking the law and betraying the trust that had been placed in him. The flashbacks now depict David's audacious execution of his plan, revealing his cunning and his exploitation of the museum's security protocols. Using his knowledge of the museum's layout and his access to the conservation department, David began to subtly replace genuine paintings with his forgeries. He would work late at night, when the museum was quiet and the security staff was minimal. He would carefully remove a genuine painting from its frame, replacing it with his forgery. He would then transport the original painting out of the museum, using his intern privileges to bypass security checks. He was careful to leave no trace of his activities, meticulously cleaning up after himself and ensuring that everything appeared to be in order. Once he had smuggled the original paintings out of the museum, David would contact a black market art dealer, a shadowy figure known only as Silas. Silas specialized in buying and selling stolen and forged artwork, operating in the shadows of the art world. Silas was impressed by the quality of David's forgeries. He recognized that they were good enough to fool even the most discerning experts. He agreed to sell the original paintings on the black market, promising David a substantial cut of the profits. The money began to pour in, far exceeding David's wildest dreams. He used the money to finance his lavish lifestyle, buying expensive clothes, fancy cars, and a luxurious apartment. He felt like he was finally getting the recognition and respect he deserved. But David's success came at a price. He was living a double life, constantly looking over his shoulder, fearing that his scheme would be exposed. He became increasingly paranoid and isolated, unable to trust anyone. The weight of his deception was taking its toll. He was a prisoner of his own creation, trapped in a web of lies and deceit. The thrill of the con was slowly giving way to the fear of discovery. He had reached a point of no return. The scene shifts back to the present, to the tense interrogation room where David is being questioned by the authorities. The investigators, armed with a mountain of evidence, are closing in. They confront David with the inconsistencies in his statements, the security footage showing him working late at night, the records of his access to the museum's archives and art supplies. They present him with expert analysis comparing his known artistic style to the brushstrokes in the forged paintings. They even have financial records linking him to Silas, the black market art dealer. Initially, David denies everything. He claims that he is being framed, that he is the victim of a conspiracy. He insists that he is a talented artist, but he would never do anything to harm the museum. But as the investigators continue to pile on the evidence, David's facade begins to crumble. He becomes increasingly agitated, his voice trembling, his eyes darting around the room. He knows that he is trapped, that there is no way out. Finally, overwhelmed by the scale of his deception, David breaks down. He confesses to everything, admitting that he forged the paintings, replaced the originals, and sold them on the black market. He explains his motivations, his feelings of resentment and underappreciation, his desire to prove his artistic talent. He sobs uncontrollably, expressing remorse for his actions and begging for forgiveness. He realizes the enormity of what he has done, the damage he has inflicted on the museum, the art world, and himself. The investigators listen intently, recording every word of his confession. They know that this is just the beginning. They still need to recover the stolen paintings, track down Silas, and assess the full extent of David's forgery scheme. The case is far from over. But with David's confession, they have finally cracked the code, exposing the truth that had been hidden for so long. The art world is about to be rocked by a scandal of unprecedented proportions. With David's confession in hand, the authorities launched a full-scale investigation to uncover the extent of his forgery scheme. They raided his apartment, seizing his art supplies, his forgery journal, and the considerable amount of cash he had amassed. They also launched a manhunt for Silas, the black market art dealer, hoping to recover the stolen paintings and dismantle his criminal network. Silas, however, proved to be elusive, disappearing without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. As the investigation progressed, the authorities discovered that David's forgery scheme was far more extensive than they had initially imagined. He hadn't just forged the Monet painting, he had forged multiple paintings from the museum's collection, replacing them with his expertly crafted imitations. The authorities brought in a team of art experts to examine the entire collection, meticulously scrutinizing each painting to determine its authenticity. The process was painstaking, requiring advanced analytical techniques and a keen eye for detail. One by one, the experts identified the forgeries, each discovery sending shockwaves through the art world. The paintings that David had forged were not just minor works, they were masterpieces by some of the most celebrated Impressionist painters in history. The total value of the stolen paintings was staggering, potentially worth millions of dollars. The museum was facing a financial crisis, as the value of its collection plummeted and its reputation was tarnished. The authorities worked tirelessly to recover the stolen paintings, tracking them down through a network of art dealers, collectors, and auction houses. Some of the paintings were recovered, but others remained missing, lost in the labyrinthine world of the black market. The investigation revealed the vulnerability of the art world to forgery and theft, highlighting the need for greater security measures and more rigorous authentication procedures. David's scheme had exposed a systemic weakness, forcing museums and collectors to re-evaluate their practices. The ripple effects of his actions would be felt for years to come. Mr. Harrison knew that he couldn't keep the discovery of the forgeries a secret forever. The art world was a small and interconnected community, and rumors were already swirling about the investigation. He decided to hold a press conference to announce the discovery of the forgeries, hoping to control the narrative and minimize the damage to the museum's reputation. He knew that the announcement would be met with shock and disbelief, but he also believed that transparency was the best course of action. The press conference was a media circus. Journalists from around the world descended upon the museum, eager to report on the unfolding scandal. Mr. Harrison, accompanied by Dr. Vance and several members of the investigation team, faced a barrage of questions. He explained the details of David's forgery scheme, outlining the methods he had used to create the forgeries, replace the original paintings, and sell them on the black market. He expressed his shock and disappointment at David's betrayal, emphasizing that the museum had always been committed to upholding the highest standards of authenticity. Dr. Vance spoke about the challenges of identifying forgeries, highlighting the importance of advanced analytical techniques and a keen eye for detail. She praised Maya's contribution to the investigation, acknowledging that her initial observations had been crucial to uncovering the scheme. The announcement sent shockwaves through the art world. Collectors, dealers, and museums around the globe were forced to re-evaluate the authenticity of their own collections. The scandal cast a shadow of doubt over the entire art market, raising questions about the value and integrity of art as an investment. The media coverage was relentless, with newspapers, television networks, and online publications all vying for the latest scoop. The story of the teenage art sleuth who had uncovered a multi-million-dollar forgery scheme captured the public's imagination, turning Maya into an overnight sensation. The Metropolitan Art Gallery became synonymous with scandal, and the name David, with betrayal. With her identity revealed, Maya became a media darling. News outlets clamored for interviews, eager to hear her story firsthand. She appeared on television talk shows, gave interviews to newspapers and magazines, and even had a documentary made about her life and her role in uncovering the forgery scheme. She was hailed as a prodigy, a genius, and a modern-day Sherlock Holmes of the art world. Her sharp eye, her meticulous research, and her unwavering dedication to art history were all celebrated. She became an inspiration to young people around the world, proving that even a teenager could make a significant contribution to the preservation of art and culture. Her school held a special assembly in her honor, where she was presented with awards, scholarships, and a standing ovation from her classmates and teachers. Even Mr. Davies, who had initially dismissed her concerns, publicly apologized for his skepticism and praised her for her unwavering pursuit of the truth. The town where Maya lived declared a Maya Appreciation Day, with parades, festivals, and art exhibitions celebrating her achievements. She received keys to the city, honorary degrees from local universities, and countless other accolades. But amidst all the fanfare and attention, Maya remained grounded and humble. She knew that her success was due in large part to the support and guidance of Dr. Vance, who had recognized her potential and given her the opportunity to showcase her talents. She used her newfound platform to advocate for art education, encouraging young people to pursue their passions and to develop their critical thinking skills. She spoke out against the commercialization of art, urging people to appreciate art for its intrinsic value, not just for its monetary worth. Maya had become a local hero, a symbol of hope and inspiration for her community. But more importantly, she had proven to herself that her obsession with detail was not a flaw but a strength, a unique gift that could be used to make a difference in the world. She finally understood that her passion for art history was not just a hobby, it was a calling. The Metropolitan Art Gallery, eager to repair its tarnished reputation and capitalize on Maya's newfound fame, offered her an internship in the authentication department. Mr. Harrison, humbled by the experience, personally extended the offer, acknowledging that the museum had underestimated her talent and dedication. The internship was a dream come true for Maya. She would be working alongside Dr. Vance, her mentor and role model, assisting with the authentication of future acquisitions. She would have access to the museum's vast archives, its state-of-the-art laboratories, and its team of expert conservators. She eagerly accepted the offer, knowing that it was an unparalleled opportunity to learn from the best and to pursue her passion for art history. She immersed herself in her new role, studying the techniques of the masters, analyzing the chemical composition of pigments, and examining the subtle nuances of brushstrokes. She discovered that authentication was a complex and challenging field, requiring not only a keen eye for detail but also a deep understanding of art history, science, and law. She learned about the various methods used to detect forgeries, from X-ray analysis to carbon dating. She also learned about the ethical considerations involved in authentication, the importance of objectivity, and the potential consequences of making a mistake. She realized that her work could have a significant impact on the art world, affecting the value of